Already that time, huh?
Yep.
All right then.
It's that time. Says you can now pin a message to the top of your live chat for viewers to read.
Okay.
I'm not sure what we would want to pin up there, but we can now pin, so. All right.
Alrighty then.
We're ready to rock and roll. Or whatever. A few people have shown up, I see. Winter is coming. Lulu, hi, how you doing? Ian says, welcome to the live chat. Participation is much appreciated. Emerald Dawn says, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Emerald. One of my favorite stones and colors.
All right.
Always have liked emeralds ever since I was little. I think that was my first favorite stone, was emerald.
I think at this point, if I had to pick a favorite one, it'd probably be amethyst. But
that was also one of my early favorites. I still really like it a lot too. Ruth says hi. Hi, Ruth. Emerald says mine too. Well, that's good then. It's a good name. Nice green color. I'm wearing green today. Decided to wear my green velvet. Just because. Carmen says hi. Hi, Carmen. Has everybody survived the festivities if you had them? This is always a hard time of year for me. Holidays. But we went through it pretty well. Everyone at my daughter's house might have been sick, so we stayed home. So that was awesome. Angela says, hi, Siofra and Ian, and chat blessings.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, I lost my chat window.
Angela says, I'm so full of pie, but I survived. Pecan pie is irresistible to anyone having a hard time with the holidays. Ooh, yes. Pies seem to make me sweat. I'm not sure why. Violet says, hi guys, I am quietly being with you in the background while I work in my kitchen. Good. It's always nice to have people that are working in the background. Lulu says, functioning, but I so don't like winters. Have no idea how I survived my childhood in northeastern Europe. Yeah, sometimes we wonder about that. Angela says, you can always make them a view day. My favorite affirmation is all holidays give me a chance to honor myself. And Angela says, good luck cooking, Violet. If indeed that's what she's doing. Absolutely. My cranberry sauce, as usual, was a huge hit. Although
so much of a hit, we didn't get any.
We didn't get any because I sent her my cranberry sauce with my granddaughter and none of it came back. So I have to make more now. But oh well.
But it's after Christmas now. After Thanksgiving now.
Yep, it is after Thanksgiving now. But yeah, so depending on where you live, I guess, depends on what time of year it is as far as weather goes. The rains have come back. Yesterday was nice and clear, but today it's definitely not. And apparently people up north of us around Portland may be getting some snow. So,
Yeah.
Something I don't miss from living up north.
Not me neither.
I had a funny encounter with a new client this week. He had a brain tumor, and the brain tumor gave him the gift. And so he seriously, is quite confident in his ability to read people. And so I was working on him, and he looks at me and he says, you're blocking me. I can't get in your head. And I said, well, that's called having boundaries, which I thought was quite funny. So we had a little bit of a discussion about whether that was polite to do or not, in a roundabout way, because I didn't want to alienate him right off the bat. So yeah, it was interesting. Robin says, hi, raining heavy here in Maryland. Lewell says, seriously, you start school in the dark, watch the sun come up around the second, third period, then it sets when you are still in school and walk home in the dark. Yeah.
Yep.
I understand that in some places in Alaska they have their outdoor activities when the sun is up because it's only up for a couple of hours, and so everybody goes outside to get whatever sun there is, depending on how far north you are. I met a kid when I was younger who told me about that, and I thought that was kind of fascinating at the time. And I understand that there's a town in the mountains, I think it's in Norway, where there is so little sun because of all the mountains around them. They have put up mirrors on the mountains around the town aimed towards the town square so that the people gather in the town square so they can feel the sun during part of the day.
Which is a way cool idea. I lived in a place once that was right up against the side of a hill, and it never got the sun. That was here in Oregon, but it never got the sun just because of the shadow of the mountain was always down there.
Perpetual darkness.
Yep.
Lewell says it's impolite to get into people's heads without permission. But apparently no one had ever noticed it before, so he did not know that people might notice. So that was kind of interesting. It certainly showed me that what I'm doing works. Because he's like, I can't get in there. How come? You're blocking me. Why are you blocking me? I'm like, you want to know something, all you have to do is ask a question. I'm very forthright. I'll answer it. But looks like I am, so far at least, going to be doing a paranormal investigation this week on Wednesday, so I'll report on that, let everybody know how that goes. It'll be interesting to see if I end up going. I'm never sure if I'm actually going to make it or not, because sometimes things happen just as you're getting ready to go, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, nope, they don't want you to come. So we'll see what happens, but it's local at least, so we'll see. It'll be interesting. I always learn new things about the area when I'm running around. Lewell says, but summer is fun. You can read by the windows at midnight. You can read by the windows at midnight. Yeah, it's true. It's hard to know what time to go to sleep when it's like that. Where I lived up north, the sun was going down around midnight. It was still light out. So, yeah, I was very unused. I was very unused to that. It was very bizarre for me.
Yeah, well, I think it would take some real adaptation.
Yeah.
You might never get used to it if you weren't born there.
Well, I think I got adapted well enough, but still, it's strange. And I can't imagine having 6 months of one day and 6 months of one night. I mean...
Yeah, no kidding. That would drive you nuts both ways.
Well, yeah, and apparently it does. People go sometimes completely crazy. They can't sleep when the sun is out all the time, and then they don't know what to do when it's dark all the time. It's definitely a strange thing. Lula says, very dark blinds. Angela says, my grandmother had a friend in Finland, high in the north, where it got super dark in winter. Angela says, I said, how did your friend do? Anything the sun was gone. She said that she learned to do everything at night, kept her house very bright and colorful, and grew an indoor garden. We had kerosene, and then we upgraded to propane light. It was very exciting. It was so much brighter. But we didn't live in a place that had electricity when we lived up there. Lewis says, curtains, yes. In fact, Ian now has my blackout curtains in his room from my office when I closed it.
Yeah, they work really well.
They work really well, yeah. Robin says, once in a phone reading, I apologized for being slow, telling the woman I felt I had to translate with the spirit of her aunt. She told me her aunt only spoke French. How did spirit do that? Yep, telepathy. Pictures are universal. Feelings are universal. Language is specific.
Yeah, Barden calls it the metaphorical language, which means that you can get communicated and then it gets turned into whatever language you speak because the communication is beyond the verbal level. So, yeah, it'll come through as if they're speaking your tongue, if the metaphorical way of communicating is what's going on, and that's what usually happens especially with less intelligent forms of life such as plants or rocks, things like that.
Oh yeah, I did have at one of the investigations I did, I had a spirit who was speaking Chinese extremely fast, and of course I could not understand a thing he said, so I managed to make him understand that he needed to slow down and send me pictures and feelings, and then I could understand what he was talking about. So sometimes I actually hear them in a foreign language, but
yeah, and a lot
that's
of times,
unusual.
a lot of times people hear them in their own sound of their own voice, so they seem to be your own internal thoughts. So it takes some work to discriminate.
Lewis says yes, a lot of plants inside and lots of reds, warm colors in the interior decorations, the way people deal with long winters. Robin says, so do you think perhaps Fae don't speak English?
I would say probably they don't have a particular language they use at all. They communicate with each other by the metaphorical language, and I'm guessing to a certain amount because Siofra is the one who's more familiar with the Fae. But yeah, they should be able to communicate with anybody, and it will generally get turned into the people's own languages, and that's my opinion on that. Though, like I say, I haven't myself had much experience with the Fae in particular.
When they have spoken to me, I've heard it in English. Um, like, can you tell the difference between our faces was one of the questions I got asked when the gnomes came to visit and kept showing me their different faces. And another time, one asked me if I was afraid of him because of how he looked. And I said, I've seen lots of strange things, so not really. I said, do you plan on harming me? No, then why would I be afraid? It's like an emotional reaction to an unknown.
Yeah, and they communicate kind of in the same way. If a plant or something communicates with you, you can be assured they're not speaking English. And even though I use the term talking to a tree just to make it simple to understand, communication with a tree would be more accurate, because trees can and will communicate with you, but it comes as a knowledge, not a verbal thing. I hope I'm describing that well.
Oh, sounds like a good description
Not that I
to me.
haven't said the same thing before on here, so.
Yeah. We do like to repeat ourselves.
Well,
Angela says trees are more like I feel that at least when I talk to my favorite tree. Robin says that French lady had appeared to me as a religious figure. I asked the lady if her aunt was religious, and she said my aunt was a nun. It was my only reading with a nun. Interesting. Well, okay. Sounds like it was a definite religious thing. Moonfire Dawn says, good evening. After last week's show, I found Moonchild, Dr. Tavener, and Psychic Self-Defense. Excited for them to arrive. Awesome. You shall enjoy them, I'm sure.
Yeah, one of the things about Moonchild is all of the names are spoofs on his Golden Dawn people he knew, his old Golden Dawn buddies, and like I think Arthur Edward Waite, I think he listed him as like Edwin Arthwaite or something in the book, so he's got names that are just slightly off from his peers that he liked to poke fun at.
So Lulu says, the only voice I've ever heard is my guardian angel, and he speaks in either my native language or English, depending on the situation I'm physically in. All other communications come in pictures. Angela added about her tree, her favorite tree, her energy was all sleepy today with winter coming. Yeah, and it's interesting that different types of trees, winter is different for each variety, and the fir trees wake up in the wintertime, or at least I can feel them more clearly. It's like they get lost sometimes in the babble of the deciduous trees when they're all like excited and growing and putting out stuff. But when they're gone into hibernation mode, then the other trees are like, yay, I can now talk without being overridden by all these other voices. So it's kind of interesting. Moonfire Dawn says, that's neat, Ian. These books wouldn't be the same without you two.
Thank you. That's not on my. Oh, there it is. Sorry, my chat was slow, I guess.
I guess so. Robin says, I normally see spirit people on an earth-like place, but the nun had come down from a heavenly level. I think they can travel, spirits. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they can. And, a lot of times people get frustrated because they're having a hard time communicating with other beings, and they think they're not trying, not the people, but the spirits. But the spirits are always trying. It's like it's us that has to clear out the clutter in our head so that we can actually distinguish their voices and hear the messages that they're trying to give us.
So it's not like shining a flashlight in the fog.
Well,
to clear out the fog.
That's right, because that just sort of refracts everything everywhere, and you can't see where the light's coming from. So Lewell says, this Mars retrograde is grinding over my natal moon, and it's such a difficult transit. Emotions from 30 years ago are coming back. I guess I need this to heal. Yeah, well, we're like those onions, It's like you think you got everything all cleared out, and then another layer shrivels up and dries and falls off, and then you're left with all the raw stuff again. It's a process.
It takes a lot of work. I'm still trying to deal with my past stuff, some of it.
Robin says, yes, some people have trouble making their mind blank. I feel I'm somewhat stupid, so I can clear my brain easily. Okay. Well, that's a gift.
It is a gift. Because I can tell you, it's not easy for me.
Yeah. It can be very difficult to tune out your own chatter. We all have those voices telling us things, like, you're not so good, or you should be better, or whatever, those voices. Moonfire Dawn says, and like onions, it can make you cry. Yes. Someone once said to me that tears were the way that the heart melts. It melts the heart open. And so it opens things up, and it's a good way of thinking about it. Like it helps to extrude it out of your body. And different kinds of tears have different chemical compositions. Like tears of sadness do one thing, tears of rage do another thing, tears of joy do something else. And it actually transforms the chemical composition in your tears or your sweat. It's one of the things that I learned when I lived up north with the black flies. If somebody was sweating really hard and they were really, really mad, the flies would die when they drank their sweat. It was kind of interesting. It became toxic. So Angela says, I've been practicing quiet meditations where I clear my mind as much as possible and sit as quietly as possible. I always heard tears were the way the heart and soul gets cleansed. Yep. Lewis says, Moon in Gemini is constantly talking, and now I'm crying periodically without any particular warning. Sorry. It can happen. Yeah. I've had periods of time where that's taken place. It's like, don't have it happen very often anymore, but every so often I'll wake up and they'll just be there, and everything will just seem somehow cry-worthy. It's sad. Moonfire Dawn says, that helps a lot, Siofra. I've had a lot of sadness, but it feels better than coldness or anger. Well, if things are stuck, if they stay in there, then they turn inward, then they become harmful to us, and they actually damage us. So finding healthy ways to let them out. With rage, for a long time, I used to do the putting a black rock on my forehead and screaming into the stone all of my frustration and anger about the nature of the universe and life and everything else that was going wrong at the time and how unfair it all was. And then I would do it until I sort of felt tired, I guess, of doing it. And then I would throw the stone in the river by where I lived and let that just take all that energy away and wash it downstream to do something more productive.
Yeah, clear out the emotional charge. It's like stuff like that gets stuck in you. A lot of it has an emotional charge, and if you can get that out, then you can just kind of stop thinking about it and let things slide. But that's easier said than done, of course.
So Robin says, I tried acupuncture, and when they removed the needles, I burst into emotional tears. Embarrassing. Weird?
Not
Not
weird.
weird. No, that's a release, an energetic release. And so it probably was clearing out some blockages, so I would think that that would be normal. I mean, when I had the foot surgery, and I woke up from it, I was very emotional when I woke up from the anesthesia, and I cried quite a bit right off the bat. I was apologizing to the nurse. I don't know why I'm crying. I'm so sorry. She says, nope. She says, this is not uncommon to have that happen. And it's that letting go, I think, and releasing that allows that energy to move that way. So Vanessa V says, hello. Hi, Vanessa V. Thank you for joining us. Lulu says, I am thankful for your post today on Facebook. You're welcome. Since I had that person ask me a question, which was a kind of an in-depth answer I gave to the question, because I take those kinds of things seriously if I'm going to answer it. And so I thought about it quite a bit and took some time to answer it on the video that they asked it for it about, which is weird because it was under deities and working with deities. So I decided that since it was a good question and I liked my response, that I would share it on my Facebook page so everybody could see it, because it's a subject that we all struggle with. Like, you know, how do we heal? My granddaughter was asking me about it the other day as well. So it's something that's on our minds.
Yep.
Lulu says, I need to try acupuncture. Well, get a good one, because, you know, like everything else, they are not all created equal.
Yep.
So if you get a bad acupuncture experience, don't just say, acupuncture doesn't work for me. See if you can find someone who knows more what they're doing and understands the energy of the process and so forth, and isn't, you know, just doing it by rote or by a chart or something like that, but has a more rounded...
Yeah. We've both done a lot of acupuncture now and then. Gone through phases.
Angela says, I didn't cry for over a decade. That was the worst. Don't bottle emotions. I do releasing meditation and offload excess energy into offering jars and candles. Whatever works.
Yeah.
You know, journaling works for some people. Externalizing the feelings one way or another, whether it's with, you know, talking with someone or journaling or meditation, different types of meditation or exercises and stuff like that. It's the right way of going about it, and leaving it bottled up does not help anyone. Babyana says, hi from Romania. Hi. When I was a child, I saw one night a ghost. He was a skeleton with a material over his body and head, holding a sword or something else. He was made out of blue energy. Interesting. So he was expressing the fact that he was dead and maybe was a warrior of some kind if he was holding a sword, I would think. So he might have died like in the Crusades or some kind of a battle, sounds like. Robin says, yes, it was a very good explanation, your Facebook post. Thank you, Robin. Angela says, I love my deity work and my matrons and now my patrons. I've been working with love my deity work, which feels odd to say. I was an atheist for a long time. Well, we go through all these different stages. It's like sometimes you need to go through the different stages before it's going to have an impact or make sense. I mean, the first time I was suddenly face to face with a God form I'd never heard of and knew all about him, it was kind of hard to say, okay, that's just my imagination, because I didn't have that in my imaginary world. And so, yeah, it's interesting. But they don't require worship, which I think is one of the things. And I, for a long time, couldn't get into any of the God forms because of my father, especially the father type God forms. Pan was not a hard sell for me, or was, I guess, since he's Pan. But that one was easier to adapt to positive male sensuality than the father figure, because of my own father being such a horrific individual. And I'm glad that I finally got to the point where I could connect with a God form that was a father figure too. I thought that was a good sign of healing for me. Lul says, when I was a child, I stopped crying at the age of 5 and didn't cry until I was 15. It was my response to abuse. My stubbornness decided not to give the benefit of showing pain to my abuser. Yeah, that's not an uncommon reaction either. My brother had that and was almost beaten to death by my father because he refused to cry. I learned pretty early on that crying minimized how much torture I got. And so okay, bring on here come the waterworks, man.
Yeah, but boys aren't supposed to cry.
And yes, and that was part of it.
Yeah.
And it was a power over thing. He was trying to like make my brother cry, and my brother refused to let him win, and so it was a battle of wills, and that was the prize apparently. How he knew he won is if he cried. That was a terrible day. 7 hours. Didn't think my brother was going to come out of the room alive. But yeah. So Robin says, when I tried Reiki, I felt like I was floating off the bench. That was weird too. Reiki's a lovely energy. Someone asked me a question on the channel the other day that I had never heard anyone say about Reiki, that they were told that by becoming connected to the Reiki energy, they were taking on the karma of all of the Reiki practitioners in their line from the beginning. And I don't think that that is true. It's certainly not in the way I understand Reiki. It's like, I think the idea that you're being connected to a specific stream of energy by, with the initiation and so forth, maybe somebody thought that that would mean that, but...
Yeah, no, individuals, the individual karmas, in my opinion, completely separate, really. I mean, there is, in a sense, a group karma with everything, but since the group karma with Reiki would be
positive healing energy.
Positive healing energy, you know.
Seems like it would be a good karma if that was the case, but I mean, when you get connected to someone intimately, like getting married in a relationship, you are taking on a certain amount of whatever their karma was before you got together.
Well,
and they with you.
Yeah,
it sort of becomes a joined karma.
A perfect example is my psychotic sister, who now you're having to deal with the effects of that.
Right.
And it had nothing to do with you. You never met her until she was already psychotic and
then came here.
Hassling us.
Yeah. And so there's always that as far as it goes. But when it comes to getting into a stream of energy like that, I don't think that that was the case. I thought it was an interesting question I'd never heard before.
Yeah, only if you, and not even then, really. You can focus on a particular master or guru or something to get that energy, but you're still, if you're doing it right, you're not getting the energy of the personality of the person, but the energy you're trying to bring through. That's one of the reasons, if you're into the whole guru worship thing, which most Westerners aren't, but you can connect with that, but you want to make sure that the energy you're bringing in is the deified form. So picturing your guru as the deity and all that is not so much for the sake of worshiping your guru, and your guru needs worship, so it makes him feel happy, but it's because by picturing him as that, you're actually bringing through that highest energy through worshiping the image of your guru. So,
I think worship is probably the wrong word for to describe it.
Yeah.
That's just the word that Westerners have used to describe it.
That's a word that they use also in India and such. I mean, but yeah, it's more the idea of connecting with that God force. The whole idea of worshiping a guru gives really an improper image, because the guru you're worshiping isn't the human being. The human being is a representation of the guru that you're worshiping. So the guru you're worshiping should be perfect, but you should never make the mistake of thinking that applies to the person whose image you're using for that. Anyway, sorry. Didn't mean to go off base.
So Lul says, to provoke responses, she would increase abuse, but I would still not cry or even scream. Too stubborn. She almost killed me, but still I wouldn't give in. I'm so sorry that happened to you, because I know from my own experience how terrible that is. Regardless of which person is doing it to you, it's it's not it's not right. Michael says, "Hello all. I was wondering what was the best way to approach an elder in our craft in regards to a seeker looking for a teacher." Now that's a good question, because finding a good elder can be difficult, just like in any other, any other field. Um, Trying to approach somebody as wanting to be a student, well, first off, if they say this is not the right fit for you, believe them. I mean, if they're a real elder, they're going to be upfront and not necessarily all cuddly and holding your hand or anything like that, because that's one of the things that, as an elder in the community, it doesn't serve anyone's needs or their growth to sugarcoat things. So if you get the impression from the individual you're approaching that it's about their ego and they need to be praised and stroked, or if they're manipulative or anything like that, then that would not make a good teacher regardless of the path that you're on. Um, so obviously respect is important, and asking questions is vital, because you can't really understand what someone is talking about usually just right off the cuff. I mean,
Unless you have the context, yeah.
Right.
And a lot of times you need to get that context.
Learning how to ask follow up, forward thinking kinds of questions that elicit a response. Uh, Students have the responsibility of being aware enough of their own shortcomings or their issues that they have to deal with. I mean, it's not easy to talk about and figure out how to just say all that stuff in a row. But, look for people that aren't in it for the ego to start with, because just because someone is supposedly an elder doesn't mean that they actually are a wise person, because you can be old and be stupid, you can be young and be wise. I mean, the two things are not necessarily correlations. And yeah, I'm not sure what else to say.
Well, just
when we approached the woman who lives not far from us, I gifted something to her. We took her classes. We were open and so forth with her to learn. When you're trying to learn from somebody, setting aside the potential differences you might have with how they think about things is useful, because then you can just sort of learn what it is that they have and then see if that's helpful for you.
If they're really somebody to learn from, you might find out that your own impressions or actions or preconceived notions are incorrect also.
Right. In the end, however, it turned out she was not a good instructor or teacher for us. She had some pretty serious issues that then turned on us, which was very disappointing. Well, anyway. And we found that out when she offered us initiation, which she felt was a very wonderful thing to offer. And we also thought that that was a very wonderful thing for her to offer. But then I started to evaluate my own reasons for doing it, because it's my responsibility. If I'm going to do something, I want to do it for the right reasons. I don't want to do it just because I can become now a card-carrying Wiccan and, have my proof or whatever for other people that might not think you're a Wiccan unless blah, blah, blah happens or some such thing. And when I expressed my concerns about that, her immediate response was, "Don't worry about it, do it, and then it'll make sense." And that gave me a lot of misgivings. And then when I said I decided not to at that time, then she turned on us. So that's not a good sign. I mean, So there's no guarantee that finding someone in the community is going to be a good teacher. Teaching is a separate thing all on its own. Someone can have a lot of knowledge and have no way to be able to express it to someone else. So being a teacher is a separate issue completely from having the knowledge and the experience. Yeah. So, yeah. Muddled is my answer. Good luck.
Well, that's okay. It's,
But,
just...
yeah, when we had that one guy wanted to be my acolyte or apprentice or whatever, and he started making plans to come up here and in the winter time and wanted to camp in our backyard and all this other stuff. It was like, what? And I'm like, it rains here a lot and you don't know what you're getting into. And I'm like, I don't think this is a good idea. And he didn't listen. He just drove up here figuring everything would work out, and it didn't. 3 days later, he was gone. And, you know, it's, yeah, it's interesting. Not straightforward, for sure. It's one of the reasons I started the channel, though, so at least people who may never have access to someone in person can have access to hopefully someone who isn't insane. I hope I'm not insane, but, you know, whatever. So Lula says, now I cry for the child who didn't. Yes, that is definitely a good thing. Robin says, Lul, yes, my stepmother was evil. I always cried in private. Angela says, hugs. I'm sorry that happened to you and that you got through it. I'm so proud of you, Siofra. Thank you. Lulu says, Robin, I still can't cry in public. Well, I was just telling my granddaughter this when Ian and I first got together, not long after we moved over here to the coast. Every time he said something like, I have something really important I need to talk to you about, I was sure that was it. We were breaking up. He was going to tell me I was a terrible person, that he couldn't stand me anymore. And then he would say something like, you're the most important person in my life and I love you more than anything and I want to stay with you forever. And I would burst into tears, not being used to having a compliment. And then he would do that to me at lunch. We would have lunch in a restaurant and he would say something nice. And since I wasn't used to the idea of getting compliments, each time he did that, it would make me cry. And after, I don't know how many years, one time we were in a restaurant and he gave me a compliment and I thanked him for the compliment. And he said, you know, I just thought it'd be important for me to point out to you that you're no longer crying in the restaurant when I give you a compliment, which of course made me immediately cry. So, yeah, it's interesting. So, yeah, the things that we need to learn how to allow, allowing, you know, comfort and acceptance and love and connection and compliments and all this other stuff is in itself quite a challenge. Robin says, Lulu, I didn't until I hit my 60s. Yes, we do hold in too much. It's best to let it fly. Angela says, hugs to all those who had rough times in their childhood and lives. I'm proud of you guys, and I'm proud of you guys for making it this far. Thank you. Lulu says, I'm only 43. Plenty of time to heal. Yep. Robin says, I learned a lot from the Reiki master. I visited in Tucson, Arizona. He was very good. Only thing I missed from Arizona. Okay. Michael says, any suggestions on the most powerful protection spell? Having good personal boundaries and being in your own power. You don't need a spell for protection if you're in your light and you're in your power. And if you have good boundaries, nothing can cross those boundaries without permission. Like the crazy person I was working on who was trying to get into my head and it just didn't happen. I wasn't trying to keep him out. I had just created healthy boundaries where he couldn't cross without permission.
And since I know that you were working on the, or at least are familiar with the pentagram ritual, that one's very good. That's not what I was going to say, though. Something about
protection,
yeah. Oh, yeah. Charging up your aura. One of the other things that's good for it, it'll charge up and strengthen your aura so that you'll naturally be more resistant to that kind of stuff. Actually, all kinds of magical workings, things that bring light into your system, things like that. All those things will build up and strengthen your aura, and that'll help a lot. Yeah, I'd have to think on what I consider the most powerful protection spell, but it would probably be, in my case, it would probably be something from Barden's third book, is Kabbalah.
So Robin says, Michael, I use Dragon's Bloodstone and black salt, pepper, garlic, and a glass ball hung at my front door. Works great.
Yeah.
Michael
Sounds
says,
like a
thank
good
you, Robin.
recipe.
Noted. I have all kinds of things like that. I have cross brooms, over my kitchen window. I have a thing that I made that's like an angel in a brass frame that has lines in it, and I put chakra stones to clear people's thought forms when they crossed under the threshold. I have that. I have witches' bells on my door. I mean, basic kind of stuff. I have things all throughout my yard, different rocks and stones and things. But yeah, just as focuses.
Yeah, it all kind of depends. Whatever your strongest ability is probably where your best protection is going to come from. I mean, if your whole background isn't, you know, voodoo or something like that, then trying to use that will probably not work as well for you as using something within your own context. I don't know if I made the point that I was trying to do it all there, but go ahead.
It sounds good to me. And Jennifer S. says, hello all, blessed be. Oh, and Michael said, thank you, Robin. Hi, Jennifer S. Michael says, great answer. Thank you both so much. Definitely noted. Your experience is why I ask. Robin says, I'm in the Bible Belt, so I learn by reading, meditation, and prayer. Michael says, no, you both are definitely not insane. Lewis says, is it okay that I don't want to belong to any group?
Absolutely.
I like to do my own thing. Absolutely, yeah.
I don't belong to any groups at this point. I used to belong to the OTO, and there were various reasons I don't anymore, but it's not my interest anymore. And Barden recommends not joining any groups anyway himself, but he working from his instructions. But
well, really, if the goal of all this is personal enlightenment and development,
right.
The problem often with groups is that we're not cleared out to start with, so we're looking to others in order to bolster our insecurities and soothe our anxieties and our fears, and then we're vulnerable to being influenced by people who have less than ethical, whatever you call it. They're not nice or good people to take advantage of someone who's in a vulnerable
there's always a group energies, and group energies aren't always a good thing,
I love group stuff. When it works, it's marvelous. You have so much energy to work with, but then personalities start getting involved, and then people start picking people apart, and then you get like jealousies and
very problematic. Yeah,
it becomes very problematic very quickly, because to find clear people, that's really hard to do. And we know we have found each other, and this is awesome. We found one other person that we can work with, and that's clear and doesn't misunderstand everything we say or take it personally or whatever. So
I did used to belong to the builders of the Additum, though, which are was a Paul Foster Case's group, and their thing is, I guess they have group things wherever they're based out of, but generally their stuff is lessons that you do yourself. So, like making your own, painting your own tarot cards is how they start out, and learning all about that and going through stuff like that. So it's I don't see too many group issues with something like that, but it really varies between the groups. Like the OTO takes serious oaths of secrecy, and you have to take those and plan on keeping them for life if you're going to be with the group, and a lot of people don't like that idea either.
well, right. Yeah. And the thing is that the whole point is to become yourself. So
yes, whatever that
means
ends up. Yes.
So Angela says, both you and Ian are amazing people. Thank you, Angela. Michael says, do you think the LBR will help with addictions?
I think so, because the LBR will help with the larvae that are usually associated with addictions and help to clear those out, which means you're having to do a lot less of psychological fighting of your addiction and more physical fighting of it, if it's something physically addicting like alcohol, say. But it takes part of the psychological aspect out and clears that out and keeps that cleared because most addictions have larvae associated with them.
And also, doing something like that is a message to your subconscious that you're wanting to be in control and take charge of your own energy.
That's true.
Which is a very powerful message. Ritual is the best medium for working with your own subconscious and for getting a direct message into it, because the subconscious responds to symbolism, which is the reason why ritual has so much symbolism, and the reason why everyone's symbolism is a little bit different depending on your personal experiences and your cultural associations, your upbringing, and so forth. Decides what those symbols mean specifically to you and your own subconscious.
Well, yeah, it's context again. You need something that works for you in context, and it's easier to use something you have some context for than to pluck something out of a foreign religion or something, though I do that. But anyway.
So Michael says, gotcha both, noted. Shoo, that was a comforting answer. That was quite a while back, I think. We were answering one of his other questions. Angela says, I imagine a bubble around energies I feel I need protection from, then one of crystal around me to charge my energy and keep me protected with the properties of whatever crystal I choose. Yeah, that's one of the things that's nice about crystals. Each one has got its own little energy matrix that's there that you can tap into. Alex says, hey guys, I have a question and wanted to know what you guys thought about the idea that you can't actually heal someone if you yourself are not healed. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like it either, because...
And I don't think it's true.
Reiki, for example, Reiki is connecting to external source with angels that can help you do the healing, and they put the healing through, and generally what happens is you end up getting the healing also.
Right, so as you transmit it through you.
It's advantageous to both. So, yes, certainly don't let that be a reason to not to try to heal somebody else, but you have to watch out. If you get good at it and practice it a lot, you have to watch out not to pass your own negative characteristics on with it, because if people pass too much of their own energy with the energy they're using from healing, the person can potentially pick up on some of the negative aspects.
And vice versa. You don't want to absorb the energy from someone you're healing.
Exactly.
That's the reason for being aware of energy and how it works. And like in my office, or when I'm doing massage, even though I don't have an office anymore, I still have the same kind of mental imagery that I use when I'm working on someone. So I like pull energy up out of the earth and out of the air and put it into my client when I'm doing my work, and then drain the energy that it moves out of them down the legs of the table and into the ground for the ground to cleanse before it comes back to me.
Yeah, that energy is everywhere, and it just takes practice to learn how to move it and ground and all that stuff. It's completely learnable.
The Antler Crown says, love, love, love you, Siofra. Found you guys recently. Can't get enough. Blessed be. Well, welcome. Thank you very much. Alex Jane says, I'm definitely a healer. I'm also definitely not fully healed. Yeah, we're all in progress. It doesn't matter how long you've been around or how much you've been through. If you're not moving forward into more health or more awareness or whatever, then you're stagnating and you're not doing anything. I learn all the time. I never stop learning, and that's the thing. It's like, yeah. So don't let it stop you, like we said. Michael says, I know what you're getting at, Ian. Robin says, Ian, yes, I think it's what we believe in. We need to believe our magic will work. I think so.
Well,
anyway.
It certainly makes it much more effective.
Well, yeah, if you're saying a magic spell and you're going, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work, this isn't going to work while you're doing it,
well,
definitely not going to work.
Yeah, but I wouldn't pick like a lot of some Western Hermetic magicians were fond of taking things that are basically incomprehensible. Crowley was one of those, and pronouncing them out of an ancient book of what they call the barbaric invocations. And to me, he found it effective, but to me that seems much less effective for me personally than actually knowing what I'm saying when I'm saying something, not just ripping off a bunch of, meaningless syllables.
Yeah. So Charlotte G says, hello all. Hi, Charlotte. Welcome to the show. Opal says, the movie The Craft comes to mind when I think of groups. That's just me personally. One of the reasons why I stay solitary. That movie drove me crazy. I was very annoyed with it. I mean, it's an okay film in and of itself as far as the kind of genre it is, but it really upset me that they were using some genuine stuff from actual magical groups and so forth and mixing it in instead of just doing the usual demonic satanic thing, because at least that I can look at and say there's nothing there that's similar.
Yeah.
There's nothing about what I do that has anything to do with it, but I figured that the mix of those two things together made it somehow more damaging as far as public education is concerned, trying to explain to people what we actually do and who we really are. But also the whole idea that everyone had to be a single element just annoys me on a personal level. Because I'm like, seriously, where did that get started that you're only one element? It's like,
Well,
hello, if you're not all five, you don't exist. So, get with the program and become grounded and rounded and
as far as groups
whatever.
go, though, perfect example is what happened in the Eugene area where they had a bunch of witch wars and basically destroyed the whole community, destroyed itself and blew up with witch wars, groups against groups and shit.
Oh yeah, petty
it
jealousies
turned ugly
and
and
things.
stuff. So yeah,
And throwing magic spells at each
Well,
other, and
yeah.
it was just crazy.
it sounds nice, but groups don't tend to work all that well in general.
Well,
in
everybody
my
likes to be
opinion,
on top. It's like we still have this higher, this
Hierarchy,
power over, power under kind of model that we're working with, and we need to work more with the power with model.
Yeah,
the idea
that's
that
a totally unenlightened attitude.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's sort of our entire society is like everything in it is structured with the power over, power under model. Like there's always someone who has more power than you, can tell you what to do. You have to be under somebody, so therefore in order for you to feel good, you have to find someone under you in order to lord it over them so you can feel like you have power, and it is doomed to fail.
Yeah.
And I would like to see that start to change.
Something the total opposite is what Sri Ramana Maharshi taught, where, basically you're one with everything, which means every other individual, everybody gets treated as you treat yourself. It would be amazing if a community could do that, but so far it seems to have just been individuals who reached that stage of enlightenment.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, I guess. We'll just keep on going as well as we can.
Absolutely.
So Robin says, I used to do group readings, and they were great, strong, fun. I was the medium with about 30 people, and the energy was good, but I like to work alone with the deity I'm working with. Madame de la Rosa says, or de la Rose says, hola. Hi, madam. Luo says, I used to belong to a Seventh-day Adventist church. It did a lot of good, but also did a lot of damage. Long story. And of course, people in the church say that it's the sinful people that are to blame, not the church itself. But I am allergic to groups now. Yeah, I don't blame you. It's like that power over dynamic again. Robin says, Alex, Jane, I believe my deity is doing the healing, not me, which is good because I'm in rotten shape. Angela says, even solitary witches are never alone. So much goes on around you when magic starts to work. Happy solitary witch I am. Yay. Yeah. Michael says, that was the answer I was hoping for. Thank you both. Ritual noted. You're welcome, Michael. Vanessa V says, a question on Reiki. Is it possible to be initiated without having to do anything yourself? I ask because my mom says that I was initiated when I was 4, but I don't remember. With Reiki initiation, it's putting the symbols in your energy field and then teaching you what the symbols are and then teaching you how to use the symbols to do distance healing and the ability to put those symbols into other people.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the Reiki initiation doesn't just work by itself. You have to use it and get that energy flowing and keep it open. Otherwise,
it sort of dissipates.
The energy channels will just close back off again.
So it could mean that if you got into it now, it would be easier I
That's
mean,
true. It might. It would probably
if
be.
that's
Yeah.
true, if that's what she meant by that, um, initiation by definition needs to be a self-awareness that and a transformation of the individual self that takes place. That's what initiation does, not just connecting you to an energy source. And so a real initiation changes an element of your personality, your ego structure, your very view of the universe and the way you interact with everything that exists. And so at 4, I don't think that could happen. So that's my opinion anyway.
Bumped the mic with my foot. I hope it didn't cause a bunch of noise.
I have no idea. I guess they'll tell us if it did. So Robin says, question, I got my granddaughter a pendulum for Christmas. My older granddaughter told me I shouldn't as it's a portal. But what's the difference? She uses tarot and runes already. What do you think? Okay. That sounds like an inexperienced individual making an assumption about a tool without any actual experience with it, is my opinion. Because a portal is a very specific thing. A pendulum is supposed to just like give you an answer and tap into universal energy. I can't use a pendulum because my subconscious keeps moving the damn thing. It's like I control it. I can make it do wild and crazy things, which is kind of entertaining in a group setting where I can make it spin and then stop instantly and not move at all and do all sorts of fun stuff with it, but I can't use it to answer any questions. I think that people think that anytime you open yourself up to receiving information or answers from spirit, you're opening a portal, but that's not what I mean by a portal. I mean, an actual portal is like a tear or a rip in the fabric between realities that things can pour through accidentally, whether you're doing it on purpose or not. So I don't see a pendulum doing that.
No, and yeah, there's been too much fiction in the movies and things about stuff like that that's gotten its influence on people. But yeah, I'd say a pendulum is about as safe as anything to use.
Well, right, and
Safer than a lot
not
of
necessarily
things, yeah.
accurate. I mean, tarot and runes is going to have different knowledge bases that you have to learn in order to use them, like understanding the meanings of them. But everything in that sense is opening you up to a possibility of information coming from somewhere else. It's like creating a scenario where that's possible. And I think, yeah. So Violet says, I'm just piping in to say how much I'm enjoying all of you. Thank you, Violet. We're glad we're entertaining you while you're in your kitchen. Lewell says, how do you use a pendulum? Well, how you are supposed to use a pendulum. You get a weighted thing on a chain or a string or something like that. You give it instructions. Usually it's like a circle is a yes and a line is a no, or I don't know which way it goes, but
well, it's,
you decide.
And it's individual.
You decide what it means by what, and then you're supposed to try and make your mind go blank, which is another trick in and of itself. Ask the question and let the pendulum give you the answer. And like with anything like that, it's only as good as your own ability to step aside, or in my case, not control the pendulum. I just can't seem to do it. So people find the tools that work best for them. And with anything like that, you have to be careful not to become dependent upon the answers that it gives, because you need to make your own choices and your own decisions. So it's like I met some people when I was in my early 20s that used the Ouija board for everything. They wouldn't go grocery shopping unless they checked in with the Ouija board first to make sure it was safe. And they were supposed to go grocery shopping. So anything that's going to take your personal power away from you, your ability to make your own choices and your own decisions, is not a good thing. So depending on how you use divination tools, if you use it to get more information about a situation, but you're still making up your own mind, you're not getting like written instructions from on high that this is exactly what you're supposed to do kind of thing, because giving up your personal power and your ability to make a choice is not a healthy way to go.
But there are all kinds of ways to do pendulums. One of the ones Barden mentions is you're communicating with your guardian spirit through your pendulum, and you make that contact on purpose with that particular being. So it's not just anything that works your pendulum is your guardian spirit, but yeah, you can use it for contacting particular ones.
So Angela
Like
says,
that.
my hands tremble too much for pendulum, but I've never had anything bad happen to me using mine. It's nice to watch it swing when I'm trying to meditate. And Robin says, when I was young, we used the pendulum, to see if a pregnant girl was having a boy or a girl. It was fun, not accurate. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, that's when I first was introduced to the idea of the pendulum. It's like a circle was a girl and a straight line was a boy, and you held it over the pregnant woman's belly and watched which way it went. Of course, I had dreams, and I took them out in my sleep and looked to see if it was a boy or a girl. We all have our ways. Opal says, I hold my breath trying to use a pendulum, trying my best not to move. It doesn't work out well. Well, not every tool is for every person.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. We're all so individual. What works good for one person may not work for 100 others.
Yeah, I can use a pendulum for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then it never works for me. It's like when I first start, I get an answer or two out of it, and then nothing. And I think what happens is I get too involved in the process and hinder it myself with, but oh well.
I should get mine out and try the experiment with the making it spin really fast and stopping on a dime. Makes me think I'm telekinetic. I don't know if I am or not, but it's very entertaining. And then I guess could impress a crowd. Woo! I can spin this. Opal says it works for me, but I have no patience for it. I mean, there's so many different ways we're getting information from the universe, and those are just some of the ways that people have used in the past. Robin says, my granddaughter is an artist, so I think the pendulum will work well for her. She's a pagan witch at the age of 17. Cool. Angela says, I saw a show where they found missing people. They called in a pendulum reader to dowse with a map. They ended up finding the crashed car within a few miles of where he circled. We actually met a guy who was using dowsing to uncover a cave. He was digging and hand digging out an entrance into a cave, an ancient, primordial, prehistoric cave that hadn't seen the air for millions of years or something. And he was pretty interesting, using dowsing for that.
Yeah.
So certainly,
some people can use it really well.
Yeah. It's like I said, it works really good for some people. It's not going to work for everybody. It's like everything else. There's no one way of doing any of this stuff. That's because we're so unique and different personalities and experiences and access to things. It all depends on what's going on. But yay. Angela says they went through a whole series of questions without telling him anything. I was very young when I saw this and very shocked. Lewell says, okay, how do you use dowsing? Well, dowsing is traditionally it's with willow stick, a forked stick, and a lot of dowsers find water. That's one of the things that they use it for. And when you get over a stream or a source of water underground, the stick actually points down to the ground. And if you're very experienced with it, you can actually tell how deep the water is and how much water is there. And so water witching is a very common practice around the planet because people needed to be able to find water. And it's interesting that Christians don't consider that witchcraft. Because if you're a farmer and you need water, you don't really care how the hell that works. You just know that it does, and you're going to pay the guy who knows how to find you water so you can get the water to feed your cows and water your
It is kind
crops.
of interesting. That hadn't occurred to me, but I had a grandfather who was a hardcore Christian preacher who accepted dowsing, water dowsing.
Okay, so Robin says, yes, there was a man who was famous who found missing children years ago. I bought a pendulum named after him, but my mind is blank now. Do you know his name, Ian? As I think.
No, I haven't specialized in the pendulum much, so I have a nice pendulum, but it just hasn't worked out all that well for me, and I haven't focused on it as a thing, so no, I don't. I probably read it and probably recognize it if I heard it, but
So Sile says, oh fun, we were talking about pendulums. I use them and they can be pretty effective. If you are sure the spirit on the other side is who they say they are, I always confirm the spirit with questions. All right. Balloonhead says, hi, I'm super late. What have you all talked about today? All sorts of things. I
Okay.
cannot give a good synopsis of the
Single
last hour.
sentence synopsis. There you go.
A single sentence synopsis. I can't think of anything. My mind is blank. Lewis says, why does it work?
Now that's a good question.
The water witching? I have no idea. I mean, okay, energetically speaking, ley lines have a certain kind of energy that goes through the planet. Water creates its own energy field, sort of like a magnetic, electromagnetic, I don't know.
When I say magnetic.
Yeah, moving water definitely creates sort of an energy field. And I've had cases that I've worked on where if you have crossed streams underneath a house, the people who live in the house often get really sick because the energy is so chaotic and moving around, and it's very disruptive to human beings.
Well, the theory that water dowsers go by is that it's attracted to the water in the willow switch that you use because willows are notoriously full of water and get struck by lightning a lot. But
well, willow attracts water.
Regardless of that, they say that the magnetic force of the water in the willow is attracted to the water underground. I can tell you that it works, but I don't really know why.
And the thing is that it's not just water that dowsers can find. They can obviously find other things. Edgar Cayce said that if you wanted to find a specific type of something, used a pendulum that had the substance in it. So if you were looking for gold treasure, for example, you would have gold in a pendulum in order to lead you to that substance. I met a person who was paid a lot of money by the oil industry to find oil wells. I have found or been on top of an oil soaked area under the ground at one point and discovered it makes me feel sick to my stomach and disconnected. It's like it separates me from the earth energy. And so the disruption makes it clear and obvious when it's happening. So, I mean, everything's got its own vibration. So, yeah. That's all I have on that right now. That's why does it work? Moonfire Dawn says, I got a couple of pendulums after I got through that chapter, but haven't tried it because I'm still focused on the mind exercises until I finish the book and start over. Robin says, I think the Amish use dowsing. Lots of people use dowsing. Yeah. Michael said, did you all hear about the NASA scientist who recently came out and said that portals are not only real, but they're trying to weaponize it? Nope. Haven't heard anything about it. Does the willow need to be freshly cut?
Now, that's another good question because the way I was taught, yes. However,
because you want it wet inside, not dry.
Right. However, that was
flexible.
That was the only thing I was taught by an actual dowser. But I know a lot of them use copper wire, stiffened copper wire, and different things to douse that are not necessarily wooden at all. So I don't know. That was what that it needed to be fresh.
Robin says, this was a man who found a child who'd been carried off by an eagle. Interesting story. Seems highly unlikely because eagles cannot lift a child. It's probably one of those not true stories that are out there. Moonfire Dawn says, my grandpa used dowsing, but he didn't like Christians and had a real witchy vibe. Definitely had something protecting his house. Good for him. The Amish do douse. We lived in an Amish community, so that's probably where grandpa learned it.
Cool.
Lewis says, what's the best way to make a pendulum? You can, anything weighted that you can attach a chain to. You want to have a single chain or a string with a weight at the bottom so it will move freely.
I'd even recommend silk string myself, but a lot of times people use a nice crystal for the pendulum part and attach that some way to the string. I use one that was made that way, but it's partly crystal on the bottom, brass and crystal.
Yeah, we have some that we bought. They were just basically a brass teardrop kind of shape.
Yeah.
It came to a point like a pendulum from a
And
clock.
that'll work, brass will work just fine for that.
Yeah. Lewell says, or Steele says, I just a weight suspended on a string. Any weight. Balloon Head says, I've made pendulums before. The one I currently use is just a piece of apophyllite wrapped in wire and strung on a chain. Author says, Rependulum, natural healers use kinesiology, touch testing to connect to their own subconscious. I thought a lot of magic is using subconscious.
Definitely some of it.
But it's more directed. I mean, the point of
Yeah.
magic is to get the subconscious to go with you in the same direction that your conscious mind wants to travel. And so the subconscious is more likely to undermine the magician than to help when it comes to that. Unless you can just disconnect and allow things to come in and happen. Opal says, I used metal hangers before, just cut off the hook parts and hold the bottom part of the hanger in the middle, and the cut ends are your pointers. Yeah, they do these things where the when you're going up, they sort of have a rod that goes up like this and down like that. You can make those out of hangers. And when you get to the source, it moves in your hand and they cross each other over top of where the water or whatever it is you're looking for happens to be.
I should say that with my own experiences with fooling around with it, I never had any luck with the metal rods. So I've seen people that do, and some of them put them in handles so they spin really nicely in the handle that they hold on to, and they seem to work really well for some people, but I never had much luck that way.
It's again like
just the willow was the only thing.
Right. What works for one person may not work for anyone else.
I'm wondering how much it might be because I learned that from somebody who was a dowser. Maybe learning it from them and getting that energy transfer is the very reason it works for me and the others don't.
Could be.
Because I've tried to do the others on myself, because there is something to that, to passing on energy too.
Becoming a part of that stream.
Yes.
Literally and figuratively.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, so the whole process is interesting. I was in the American Dowsing Association where I learned a lot. They actually had some stuff that they made to be able to tell the edges of an aura. And it was like a balanced bullet-shaped metal thing on a wire that floated down like this so that it like could move this way and the handles were up. And then you would take it and go towards a person, and when it hit your magnetic field, the thing that was bouncing there would stay behind like that. It was actually pretty interesting to see because it would do that and you're like, it's not supposed to do that. It's like, why is it doing that? And that's one of the times I learned about my aura being rather large. They did a test on me and they ended up having to stand on a chair to find the top of my aura. Of course, they didn't know I had a 9-foot tall guy standing behind me at the time, which I think they were actually finding the top of his aura, but but no one else could see him but me, so whatever. Robin says, it has to be some type of energy. My family knows I can find missing items, only emotional things like missing wedding rings, but I'll just walk to it as I pray. I don't use any objects.
You missed balloon heads there.
Balloon Head says, I've only used pendulums for divination work, mostly yes/no answers. What else can you use them for?
That's mostly it, but Barden has you use them in a couple of different ways. One of them is to detect when, if you make an elemental and you want it to be back in its body so you can work on it some more, you can use it to detect the elemental by the way it taps. You use it like a sidereal pendulum, so it taps with the elemental present, and some other little uses like that. But mostly, that's what I've seen is finding out information has been the use.
Balloonhead says, who was that behind you? Oh, he was the Plutonian. He was around me for quite a few years. Very odd looking guy, like, mostly a skull with tight skin on his face and glowing eyes, and then a black shroud from the neck down, so I never saw his body if he had one, but he was quite tall. Sile says at Balloon Head all kinds of stuff you can use it on. A map to find things, people. You can get a board with letters and numbers and use it for divination like a Ouija board. Balloon Head says, ooh, that's cool. Ian, thank you. Medusa Fire says, some use the pendulum for finding spots to heal on your body.
True.
I just use my fingers. I just find them that way. Robin says, when I would look for missing children, I'd visualize a map and see a beam of energy on the spot. So I'm thinking of that as energy. I can see the beam. Yeah, that would be a good way for you to be able to tell.
That makes me want to make our divination device
Well, I have all the parts for it, if we ever get that far.
Yeah, well, maybe a good bit, make a video on it and see if it actually works. What we're talking about is a device that was seen by a friend of ours on an Enochian plane and an Enochian tablet, about a scrying device to find a treasure on a map, and it has a little ruby as a lens in it that you use, and a little stepped pyramid, and it sounds pretty cool and potentially workable, but the big problem is you have to contact the original being
to get it to work,
who gave him the plans for the device. He has to energetically sign it, more or less. So
in order to make it.
And I don't know if we can find out. Yeah, who had he contacted?
And he doesn't remember. He didn't write that part down for us.
Well, he might remember, but
he might.
I haven't asked him.
All right, we can ask him. So Sile says at Medusa Fire, yeah, true. I've seen someone use the pendulum on a chakra map. Balloonhead says, whoa, that's amazing. Yep. Robin says, like a Jupiter talisman?
The divination device?
No, yeah.
No,
it's not like a talisman.
It's set in an like an elemental cross, and it has a little built-up pyramid in the center, and then a little piece of ruby. I think it's ruby, wasn't it, or was it garnet?
Nope, ruby. I had to buy a ruby
for the lens. And we should actually put this thing together and try it and see if it works, but that would be a whole deal, which we could do, though. Try and see if we can figure out enough Enochian to get to the guy and have him sign it. Might be a fun experiment, even if it ended up doing nothing. You never know these things you see on the other planes. He never made it because he thought it wouldn't physically work. I'm not so convinced that it wouldn't.
Who knows? So Vanessa V says, I heard once that you could use a pendulum to close portals, but the woman I heard it from felt fake to me, like a charlatan just trying to sell more things. Well, nothing is going to work to close a portal if you don't know what you're doing. I don't know that the tool itself is as important as understanding what the portal is and how to close it. I mean, it's an ability to have to be able to do that. When I can open up a portal to the other side whenever I need to now because of the experience I had in Texas when I opened it with a group of people, and now I can just do it as needed, but I can also close it. And I have found some pretty good sized portals. I was telling my granddaughter about the one I found at one house locally here that was like the entire floor of their living room. It was like 10 feet across. I've never seen anything quite so big before. And they had spirits coming in and out constantly. But the way I tend to close that kind of a portal is by figuring out which direction the energy is flowing. It can flow either way. And then I go the opposite direction, whatever way it is, and slowly get tighter and tighter and tighter until I've got it down to just a point, and then it's closed. So that's how I deal with those. Robin says Joseph Smith used seer stones in a hat.
I did not know that.
Okay, then.
You know Joseph Smith.
I know who Joseph Smith was, yes. I do know that. Yeah, well, you know, the Bible had all kinds of stuff. I actually ended up speaking Hebrew in a dream the other night, and the The heck is it called? The plate.
Plate? Oh,
Yeah.
the breastplate.
The breastplate.
This is, she's talking about
The
what is
breastplate
considered
of,
to be Aaron's breastplate from the Bible.
I had that happen. I was in a dream and I said a Hebrew word and the breastplate appeared in front of me. I have no clue what the heck that meant.
It's
and
got
I thought,
a bunch of stones on it, like
yeah.
16 stones set
And
kind
I
of in a
don't speak
square
Hebrew, so that was
configuration.
also kind of interesting that it just sort of happened like that. But I was like, weird dream. You never know. But it was kind of entertaining. I was doing a lot of stuff that night.
12 stones, okay. Protection.
Yes.
Cool.
So, who knows where that came with? Author says, do you remember the Hebrew word? Sound it out. Nope. I do not remember the Hebrew word. I just remember it happening. And I remember sounds coming out of my mouth and it appearing, but I don't have any memory of actually what the word was. So, you were supposed to look and see which stone lights up. Oh, I see. Well, I don't think I remember that either. It was just there, and we were on to something else. I didn't write that one down. I should have, because it was pretty weird and interesting. But
Well, it was probably just a word, but it's
and
not
we
like
were
Siofra
watching The
hasn't heard.
Curse of Oak Island, and they talk about the Masonic one a lot on that. So it could be one of those subconscious things that got stuck because the show just came back.
It's not like you haven't heard Hebrew words, especially since I do a little bit of the Kabbalah stuff with Hebrew.
Lulu says you were supposed to look and see which stone lights up. It's like you were a high priest, or in my case, a priestess, because it had room for female body parts. It was shaped. So maybe it wasn't Hebrew, maybe it was something else. But anyway, it was interesting. Robin says the Hebrew priests also wore pomegranate-shaped bells. I wondered about that fruit and what it meant.
That's a good question, and I know that specifically the builders of the attic include the pomegranate in the tarot cards and things for a specific symbolism, but I don't remember what it means off the top of my head right at the moment.
Well, in general mythology, the pomegranate is the fruit of the underworld. And partaking of it gives you the ability to go down into the underworld or the inability to get out of the underworld, depending on how you read it and connect with that.
That's right. I remember that now.
So maybe their pomegranate-shaped bells had something to do with their ability to travel in the realms and talk to angels and the dead or something.
The pomegranate symbolized fertility. In ancient Greece and Rome, it had a strong association to Aphrodite, the Greek goddess of love, as well as Hera, the Greek goddess of marriage and childbirth.
And then Persephone, who's the one who ate the damn thing in the underworld. Michael says they say that the Jewish alphabet is magical. Yes, they do say that.
And actually, it's pretty
there's
interesting.
There's definitely some truth to
it. Because what we're dealing with now is the modified Hebrew alphabet, which is also supposed to be holy and means things, but it was changed from the original Hebrew alphabet because it was considered to be too holy to use in books and things. So it was too holy to use for regular purposes. So the original Hebrew, which I think is pretty similar to Aramaic, is even more of a pictograph language where each of the letters have a particular meaning and association, and most of them have a particular object associated with them because of their shape. Like the Hebrew letter A means an ox, an aleph.
It's sort of like the runes, the Nordic runes have different shapes to mean different things like that too.
Yeah, and there's Beit, which is a house. I don't know how to pronounce the Hebrew properly, so excuse me if I'm wrong, but like Gimel, and that means a camel is the meaning of that letter. So yeah, that's a whole science on its own, but yes, it is a pretty much a magical language. And I went back and used the Aramaic some just because of that for different things I've made in the past.
So Robin says, oh yes, Persephone ink from pomegranates. Balloonhead says, I caught myself scrying the other day and someone said something to me in a language I didn't recognize. I heard it in my ears, but I don't remember what the word was.
Yeah.
Sile says the High Priestess card has the pomegranate.
Yes, that is the one.
Yep. And Balloonhead says, have you seen pomegranate blossoms? They look otherworldly, in my opinion. No, I haven't. I'll have to look them up. Sounds like fun. There's some interesting looking life forms out there.
Yeah. In response to Balloonhead's comment earlier, scrying, somebody said something to me in language you didn't recognize. I once got an image, a very strong image of a piece of parchment with a bunch of writing on it that was in a language I didn't recognize. I recognized some of the symbols, but unfortunately I wasn't in a place where I could write any of it down. I really wanted to find out what that thing meant, but yeah, it had like it wasn't Russian, but it had like a reversed J's that were used in it or something like that. Anyway, it's been too long now. It's always fascinating when something like that comes through.
Robin says, I'll bet it was a pomegranate, not an apple that Eve ate. Well, I think they think it was a fig, but I don't know, since I don't believe Eve ate anything. I think that was propaganda. Make women responsible for all the ills in the world. Yes, whatever. But
reminds me of Aerosmith did a song called Adam's Apple about anyway. About the garden, yeah, anyway. Sorry. I've been playing random music lately, so that's what popped into my head.
Random associations.
Yep.
Sometimes they have no meaning whatsoever. We like to try and make meaning with random associations and make them make sense. Kind of like when we see a blotch on a rock or a tree and turn it into a face. Like our brain likes to make things
It's true.
Have a pattern and make sense, recognizable
it's true,
sense.
but sometimes that relates to a certain extent to the energetic aspects, though.
So Robin says, didn't Siofra do a post on portals? I do believe I did a video on portals, yes.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I'm pretty sure I did. I
Did
think
a
I
lot of
called
them.
it
I don't remember.
Portals. Moonfire Dawn says, I love classic Aerosmith.
Cool. Me too.
But yeah.
Not all the time, but occasionally I gotta get back to old Toys in the Attic or one of those. Yep. Good old stuff.
Yep. Well, we're getting close to our time. We've only got a couple minutes left. So, any
that
last minute
happened fast.
questions that I can't answer because I don't have time to answer them? Denise says, hi everyone. Hi Denise, you came just at the end. We start at 2 my time, so Sile said, I have heard the mythology that Lilith was Adam's first wife before Eve and was kicked out of the Garden of Eden because she refused to lay under Adam. Yeah, she wouldn't do what he said.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with Lilith stuff, but I know it's in there.
Balloonhead says, wow, that sounds like a bummer, Ian, but it's always exciting to experience things like that. Denise says, just my luck, dang it. Well, next Sunday, show up earlier. We have an hour and a half together, and we're just like a minute and a half away from the end. I'm so sorry. But you can send us an email if you want to, if you have a question you need to ask, or just put comments on our videos and so forth. I check them regularly. Robin says, I just wanted to say, Siofra, that aqua blue is your color. You look great on camera in that shirt. Thank you. This is not a shirt. This is a shawl. I have wings. But yes. Ian says, blessed be everyone, and thank you for participating. We love chatting with you guys. We do too. Violet says, love you guys. Denise says, thumbs up and hearts. Balloonhead says, I have to get better at being on time to these. Lulu says, take care, have a good week. Steele says, smile. Or Sile. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Bye, everyone. Okay, guys. Thank you all for participating, and we really enjoy our chats together. I know I didn't do a video this week because of the holidays, but we'll get back into doing that soon. And I'll definitely keep you updated on that paranormal investigation I do if it happens on Wednesday. I might do a video right after so I don't forget what happened. Darling Darlene says, hello. I love watching you guys. I learn something new every time. Blessed be. Opal says, have a great evening. And Vanessa B says, thank you. Balloonhead says, have a beautiful week. Okay, guys. Blessed be to everybody out there, and just keep on learning. And be kind to one another.
I'm gone.